maybe 3.5 hours a week in the gym of actual weight training, and some of my competitors are doing probably that much every day.
That's great.
Back in the 1970s, legends like Arnold Schwarzenegger focused on symmetry and aesthetics. But in the 1990s, Dorian Yates changed everything. Known as the original mass monster, Dorian brought an insane level of size and shredded conditioning that set a new standard. But what made him so different? How did he go from an unknown guy in England to becoming a 6-time Mr. Olympia who left his rivals in the shadows? Stick around to find out how Dorian Yates became the man behind the mass monster era. Bodybuilding wasn't always about being the biggest guy on stage. If you look back at the 1970s, the golden era, you'll see that the top bodybuilders like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Frank Zane focused on symmetry, balance, and aesthetic looks. Back then, the goal was to have a well-proportioned body that looked like a work of art. This was the style that people admired. Lean, muscular, but not overly massive. That all changed in the 1990s when Dorian Yates flipped the bodybuilding world upside down. Dorian Yates didn't start off with the easiest life. Born on April 19, 1962, in a small English village called Hurley in Warwickshire, he grew up in a modest environment. He lived on a farm, which meant he had a peaceful but somewhat isolated childhood. Life was pretty routine until tragedy struck when he was just 13. Dorian's father passed away from a heart attack, leaving a significant gap in his life. Losing a parent so young is tough, and it meant that Dorian, his mom, and his sister had to adapt and find new ways to manage life without his dad. After his father's passing, Dorian's family moved to a town called Walmley in Sutton Coldfield, near Birmingham. This change of place, along with his father's loss, made things feel even tougher for young Dorian. He wasn't in the best situation, and it became easy to fall in with the wrong crowd, which he eventually did. As a teenager, he started getting into some trouble, hanging out with friends who weren't the best influence. At 18, he found himself in serious trouble. Dorian and his friends were arrested while crossing Birmingham to attend a party. They were sentenced to 6 months in Watton Youth Detention Center. But surprisingly, this challenging experience led him to something that would eventually change his life forever: weight training. During his time in the detention center, Dorian discovered the gym. It was his first taste of serious weightlifting, and he quickly realized he had a natural talent for it. He wasn't just good at it, he was strong and determined, and the gym became a place where he could focus his energy positively. Lifting weights gave him a sense of purpose and control over his life that he hadn't felt before. After he was released, he decided to make a change. Instead of going back to his old ways, Dorian started working out more seriously. The gym became his sanctuary, a place where he could focus on something productive. In 1984, Dorian took a big step in his bodybuilding career by entering his first competition, the Mr. Birmingham, as a novice. To everyone's surprise, he won. For someone who was relatively new to bodybuilding, this was a huge achievement. Winning Mr. Birmingham gave him confidence, but it also made him realize that he had potential in the bodybuilding world. From there, he set his sights even higher. Just 2 years later, in 1986, Dorian entered the British Championships at the heavyweight level. This was a tougher competition, with more experienced bodybuilders who had been training for years. But Dorian wasn't intimidated. With his intense training and growing determination, he managed to win the title, becoming the British champion. After becoming British champion, Dorian knew he wanted to compete at the highest level. His goal was the Mr. Olympia title, the most prestigious title in bodybuilding. But he wasn't rushing it. Dorian believed in working quietly, training harder than anyone else, and only stepping on stage when he was absolutely ready. By the time he finally entered the Mr. Olympia competition in 1991, he had built a reputation as the silent killer of bodybuilding, a competitor who trained in the shadows, away from the spotlight. In 1992, after years of preparation and relentless hard work, Dorian finally achieved his dream and won the Mr. Olympia title. But he didn't stop there. After winning Mr. Olympia 1992, Dorian Yates knew he had achieved a massive milestone. But instead of resting on his success, he had a different plan. Dorian didn't want to be just another Mr. Olympia winner. He wanted to redefine what a bodybuilder could look like. At that time, bodybuilding was about balance and proportion, but Dorian saw an opportunity to push the boundaries. His goal was to get as big as possible while staying extremely lean, something no one had really done before on that level. When he returned to his training after the 1992 win, he went underground, away from the public eye, and put all his focus on transforming his physique. In just 1 year, he gained an unbelievable 30 pounds of muscle. When he stepped back on stage in 1993, people were blown away. The bodybuilding world had never seen a physique like his. Massive, muscular, and incredibly ripped. He reportedly reached 270 pounds, making him the heaviest bodybuilder to compete at that level at the time. To put that into perspective, the previous Mr. Olympia champion, Lee Haney, had weighed a maximum of around 243 pounds. Dorian's size was on another level. Dorian had an intense level of conditioning, which means he had very little body fat, and his skin was so thin that every single muscle fiber was visible. This granite hardness look became his trademark. For the next 5 years, Dorian won every competition he entered, turning Mr. Olympia into what people called Dorian's backyard. Dorian followed a technique called high-intensity training, or HIT, which was originally developed by bodybuilders like Arthur Jones and Mike Mincer. With HIT, Dorian's workouts were surprisingly short, just around 45 minutes. He didn't believe in endless sets or spending hours in the gym. Instead, he focused on putting everything he had into each exercise, performing only 1 or 2 working sets per exercise, but at maximum effort. The idea was that if you're truly giving your all in a set, you shouldn't be able to do more than 1 or 2. His routine often consisted of heavy compound lifts like barbell rows, bench presses, and squats. But unlike other bodybuilders who lifted for endurance, Dorian focused on going as heavy as he could for fewer reps. For example, he was known for lifting 435 pounds on underhand barbell rows, 425 pounds on incline presses, and even 595 pounds on shrugs. Instead of working out every day, he trained only 4 days a week, using the rest days for recovery. Dorian Yates earned the nickname The Shadow during his reign in bodybuilding, and for good reason. Unlike many bodybuilders who love the spotlight, Dorian took a different approach. He stayed out of the public eye between competitions, training in solitude in his home gym in Birmingham, England. He was a tough competitor who came to each show fully prepared and didn't leave room for others to catch up. Each year, the bodybuilding world would anticipate whether Dorian would compete, and if he did, they knew he would bring something new and mind-blowing. He dominated the Mr. Olympia stage for 5 years, creating a sense of inevitability around his wins. Fans began to expect that, as long as Dorian was competing, he would win. One of the most famous aspects of Dorian's physique was his back. His back was so wide and thick that it earned him the nickname The Shadow because he literally cast a shadow over his competitors. The detail in his back, especially the Christmas tree shape in his lower back, became legendary in bodybuilding. The Christmas tree is a look that only comes with extreme muscle control and leanness, and it's one of the hardest things to achieve. Another standout feature was his 20-inch calves. Calves are one of the toughest muscles to build, and Dorian's were so developed that they look like they belong to a giant. Having massive calves completed his overall look, making him seem even more powerful. Dorian Yates' career was intense, and so was his retirement. After dominating the bodybuilding world for years, winning 6 Mr. Olympia titles from 1992 to 1997, Dorian faced some tough physical challenges. Throughout his career, he had dealt with multiple injuries, pushing his body to the edge every time he trained. But by 1997, things got more serious, and the injuries became harder to ignore. In the months leading up to the 1997 Mr. Olympia, Dorian suffered two major injuries, a torn bicep and a torn tricep. These weren't small setbacks. They were serious injuries that could have sidelined anyone else. Despite his injuries, Dorian managed to win the 1997 Mr. Olympia title, his sixth consecutive win. But this victory was not without controversy. Many people believe that Dorian's physique wasn't at its peak that year due to the injuries. Some even thought that the runner-up, Nasser El Sombaidi, deserved to win because his physique looked healthier and more balanced on stage. After securing his sixth title, Dorian made the difficult decision to retire. The injuries had become too severe, and his body couldn't handle the intensity he was known for. His retirement marked the end of an era as the mass monster who had changed bodybuilding was stepping away from the stage. After retiring from professional bodybuilding, Dorian Yates didn't just fade away. Instead, he turned his focus to the business side of the fitness industry, where he could use his knowledge and experience to influence the world of bodybuilding in new ways. He started by taking over Temple Gym, a hardcore gym in Birmingham, England, where he had trained for years. Dorian's next major move was in the supplement industry, an area where he made a huge impact. In 1998, he teamed up with Kerry Case, another well-known figure in bodybuilding, to form CNP Professional, a company specializing in high-quality nutritional supplements. They developed a line of products endorsed by Dorian himself called the Dorian Yates Approved line. This partnership quickly gained popularity, especially in the UK and later in the United States. CNP Professional was known for its commitment to quality, and Dorian's reputation helped the brand stand out in a crowded market. After several years, Dorian decided to go solo and start his own company, Dorian Yates Ultimate Formulas. He wanted to create supplements that reflected his own standards, focusing on protein and weight gain products that bodybuilders could trust. He then started another company, DY Nutrition, in 2011, which specialized in pre-workout formulas. In addition to supplements, Dorian also produced several training DVDs through DY Nutrition, where he shared his workout techniques, diet advice, and insights into building a powerful physique. Hey, if you enjoyed learning about Dorian's journey and his impact on bodybuilding, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about Dorian's approach to bodybuilding?